So welcome everybody. Thanks for coming. We have a good group. Let me introduce. This is Roy
Hi,
Shabazian. Why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Roy Shabazian. I teach math at Santa Ana College and have been using MyOpenMath since a colleague in 2012 tried it out and had a good experience and shared their course with me, and I just changed the syllabus and changed the due dates and started teaching the same class and had a pretty smooth use of it and have been using it ever since.
Great. And I'm Larry. I'm at Lake Tahoe Community College. I've been working with OER since before it was called OER. So I've been doing this like probably 15 years or so. And but right now I have, and I'll talk about that in a bit, I have a ZTC math grant to work at trying to bring OER into mathematics, creating what we need to create, gathering what we need to get, and getting a community. And thanks for you. You may not know, but by signing up, you are now part of our wonderful community of math OER, at least interested people. So what we're going to talk about today is a few things. One, we'll spend a little bit of time talking about just textbooks, because that is, in math, that's really a small part of OER, or at least of the learning materials. And we're going to spend the majority of the time talking about more of the technology pieces. Most math classes, probably all of them, are now using some kind of homework system, so like MyLab. And it's very hard to convince faculty to not use a homework system that's a computer homework system. So the idea is we are creating our own. Okay, the system is created, but what we're doing is we're organizing and gathering. And I have one other person I want to introduce who is the creator of all of this from the root, and that is David Lippman. Can you introduce yourself? I saw you were here. David?
David's on mute,
Ah.
I think.
Well, David's a great guy, even if we can't hear him. But he has developed and created the MyOpenMath system. And that is like the system that most OER math faculty are using for online and homework systems. And we're going to get deep into that. So maybe when we figure things out, you can have a chance to talk too. But I thought I'd start out with going through some of the textbooks. One of the first things that a lot of people say is, what book are you using? Okay, and there are different books that are used. And one of the books is OpenStax. And in fact, at my college, pretty much all of our math classes are moving to to OpenStax. So let me show you. Let me go find it. So this is the OpenStax page. And when you get to it, it's just openstax.org. When you get to it, you can just click this little icon, go to subjects, and go to math. They don't have everything, but they have most of the things that we teach. So they got pre-algebra, algebra, pre-calculus, trig, we got calculus, and there's statistics. Okay, and that's kind of at least for our college, that's the go-to place to look for things as a start. And because it is very well funded. There's this guy named Bill Gates, you might have heard of him, who has put some money, Gates Foundation has put some money into OpenStax, and then there's a whole lot of other money coming in from other sources, which means it is reviewed all the time, and they fix the problems like right away, and there are ancillaries, all kinds of nice things with this. So our college has moved to OpenStax. I'm not going to, show you all the books because that'll take forever, but I'll let you browse through any of these books. And another place that's a good resource is Cool4Ed, and that's a California State website that hosts OER. And if you go to find free and open textbooks, for example, and you go to math, then this is what it has, and it goes through Merlot. And I happen to be the chair of the Merlot editorial board for math, so I know a little about that too. And it goes through Merlot, and you can see all of the books that the Quill for Ed, which is a California site, has taken a look at, said these are decent books, and reviewed them and put them on their site. So there's lots and lots of great places you can go find textbooks. Another one.
Please ask again. I didn't quite hear what you said about homework grading.
Somebody want to know about homework? That we'll get to later.
Okay.
Yeah, the paper homework is all in these textbooks, but the online homework, we're going to spend most of this workshop just doing that. That's why I'm flying through the books so that we can get to that. But I want to start with the books. The next site, and I'm going to let Roy talk about this a bit.
Yeah, before I do, just a couple of logistical things. We don't have host access to the webinar, so just ask if you could mute your microphone, and at some point we might ask for some questions. That would be a good time to unmute, but I'm going to call out Dan Crump. Could you mute your microphone?
Sorry, I thought it was muted. Okay.
All right. So as Larry said, the go-to place, I'll say two go-to places to look for textbooks are the OpenStax website, and also another website which is on the screen is the opentextbookstore.com. And that one has a list of quite a few math textbooks, including most of the OpenStax textbooks, and then there's a number of other ones that are on there. So there's a pretty good selection. You can see it starts out at the arithmetic level, and then there's some pre-algebra textbooks. You got your algebra, beginning algebra, intermediate algebra, and then the pre-calculus, including some college algebra topics. And then you have the calculus sequence, a lot of Calc 1, and then there's a couple Calc 2 and Calc 3 available from OpenStax. And then you have some textbooks for math for liberal arts majors, and then a number of statistics books, and then a couple other higher level math courses. Most of these textbooks, there's an associated online homework template available in MyOpenMath, and we'll look more into that in a minute. But these two places, OpenStax and the Open Textbook Store, are good places to go if you're looking for something more like a packaged, ready-to-use textbook that would have an associated online homework that goes with it.
I'm going to stop share so that you can share your screen now.
Okay. Maybe in this transition, if anyone has any questions, now would be a good time to ask those. And also, if you do have a question while we're talking, you could also post those in the chat, and whichever one of us is not talking, we'll try to address that or maybe interrupt for a question. So I'm going to start by sharing actually that was the wrong window. Try that again. I'm going to start by sharing a course that is in Canvas using MyOpenMath to display the homework assignments, but from a student perspective, they don't really know that they're leaving Canvas. So if they're familiar with using Canvas for their other courses, everything is familiar here in terms of the calendar, the gradebook, all basically work the same way as they would work in their other courses, except that the actual content of the math assignments is actually being behind the scenes displayed by MyOpenMath. So this is an example course that we teach at my college. I consider it a quantitative reasoning type course. We call it intermediate algebra for SLAM, statistics and liberal arts majors. And so if you're familiar with Canvas, this looks like the familiar screen. You got the Canvas menu, the course menu, and then the content of the course. So a couple things to start with. The calendar that students would be familiar with in Canvas would be automatically populated with all of the assignments that are available through MyOpenMath, and those show up here, and students can click on an assignment for a particular day and start that. And then also students would be perhaps using the modules, and this is another page that MyOpenMath will automatically populate all of the content. So you can see here's Unit 1, Lesson 1, and all the assignments are available in Canvas, but it will use MyOpenMath to display them. I'm going to pause there if there's any comments Larry wants to add, and then from there I'll show a particular assignment. So one assignment that typically students would do, maybe the first assignment they do, would be an introduction to MyOpenMath, and this covers the basic entry, how you enter different types of questions into MyOpenMath. Included in this question is a video explaining how to use the formula editor, and things like rounding answers and those sorts of things, and also how to enter expressions versus numbers. And those would all be covered by this assignment, so students know generally how to enter different kinds of things. Also in this assignment you have so there might be some questions that are asking for a list. So this gives students a little bit of background about how those questions work and just using a comma between their answers. And you notice there's a blue entry tips that pops up here, gives students examples of how they might enter the answers. A couple other questions here. So this one gives students a little bit of explanation of how the graphing questions work. And you can see there's lots of different graphing tools. You have basic lines, parabolas, absolute values, some basic rational functions, exponential functions, circles, ellipses, and then some basic sine and cosine type graphs. So students are asked to enter a couple of these things. It also talks about how to move a point. So after they've drawn it, if they need to adjust, they can do that, and they can also clear. There's also some videos explaining how to use the graphing tool. Again, this assignment is to just give students a little bit of familiarity with how the system works before they actually get into the math content. Here's a question on just explaining how to read what type of answer students should be entering for a particular question, and it quizzes them on that. One concept that's pretty unique to MyOpenMath is the concept of a late pass. The idea here is that students could, with instructors' sort of pre-authorization, do some assignments late by a certain number of hours and with a certain number of deduction percentage. And so this question helps students get familiar with how those late passes work. And the last question is about review mode. So typically an assignment after a due date would be available in review mode, and students would be able to enter answers and even see what their score would be for that question, but it doesn't change the score in the grade book for that assignment. Sometimes this is one of those areas where there's some confusion. Sometimes students will go in after due date and they'll do these questions in review mode, but not knowing that it's in review mode. And then they'll see, oh, I got the first question right, I got the second question right, and then look in the grade book and see that they have 0 points. And then maybe come to the instructor and say, hey, I did those questions, how come I have a 0 in the grade book? And it's usually because they were in review mode. So rather than go through that, we have a question in the intro assignment to sort of preempt those kinds of issues from coming up. So those are some basics of the intro assignment and how the different question types work in MyOpenMath. One other thing, I think we covered the graphing. So I think I'll maybe just give an overview of this particular course and then move on to a different course. And Larry's going to help me make sure I stay on time because I'm trying to balance the clock and all the other things going on my screen. So in this course, this is the modules page. I'm going to just collapse things so you can see what the actual math content is in this course. This is that quantitative reasoning course, so there's a little bit about graphical charts, Venn diagrams, some things about inequalities, histograms, a little bit about measures of central tendency and spread, and then there's some probability, more on inequalities, proportions, and then in Unit 3, there's a lot about lines. So interpreting slope and intercepts, a little bit on linear regression. And then in Unit 4, we cover quadratics, a little bit of business applications, but not much. These students generally are not business majors, but there's some interesting quadratic applications there. Simple and compound interest, and then exponential and logarithm functions. So this course at my college is a course that students would take before a statistics course, a transfer level statistics course. And so it covers a little bit of algebra and then some basic things that might help them in either a statistics course or a math for liberal arts majors. Also, our education students who maybe want to teach elementary school might end up in this course. So that's the quantitative reasoning course, and this one we're seeing it through Canvas, and again, students generally don't know that they're using MyOpenMath, but as an instructor you'd be working mostly through MyOpenMath to get this all set up. I'm going to take a minute to switch over to another window to show you a pre-calculus course. Just a second here. Larry, if there were any questions you want to address, this might be a good time.
Yeah, there was a question about the OpenStax integration.
I have a question, Larry.
Go for
sure.
it.
Ask a question.
Are you going to talk about how you transferred MyOpenMath to Canvas?
Yeah, I don't know if we're going to have time for that, but I will do my best to show you at least where that would happen.
Yeah,
Thank you.
And I'll leave it to Larry's judgment to see if we have time.
Thanks.
Oh, I just realized.
So
Yeah, let me just chime in 1 second. We've made a video on how to do that, and it's about a 10-minute video. And we decided that it's easier if you just email me, for example, at drlarrygreen@gmail.com. Then I can show you how to get into that, and then watch the 10-minute video and just go step by step by step, and it will happen.
Great. Are you going to have your email address on the screen?
I'll put it in the chat box right now. How's that?
Thank you.
Got to get to the chat.
Good question. So now what we're looking at, I assume you can see this screen that says MyOpenMath at the top. And so we're looking at an example college algebra or pre-calculus book. And it's the same kind of course, but we're looking at it from the MyOpenMath. So you see the website we're on is myopenmath.com. So this is not involving Canvas at all. And so this would be another way to offer your course to students if you don't want to use Canvas. So you can see this course has a little bit of introductory information that would show up for students during the first week, and then the main thing that they'll see first they log in is a calendar which shows assignments, and it looks like today what's due is a Chapter 10 review and a Chapter 10 quiz, which they could pull up, and it looks the same as what we saw looking at the assignments on Canvas. This course has a folder with some information for instructors, maybe like a to-do list on how to get started with this course. The course information is information for students, so this would include a link to the syllabus, a link to the full textbook, and then a few other things like the introductory assignment. And then you see the content here. I'll just show an example section so you can see how it's organized. So this particular section, there's a list of videos for quick access, but generally students would be working off of the video assignment, which show this. So it'll show a video right on the screen ready to watch, and then below that video, there would be a basic question just to make sure that they got the main concept out of the video. Nothing super challenging here, just a little bit of accountability to make sure the student got the concept out of the video. And you see there's a number of questions like that. It's a short assignment. These video assignments are also useful if you want to do some sort of flipped classroom, maybe partly flipped classroom. So there's an assignment ready to go that you could have due before class, and then during class you would have more time to do some class activities or some group work, however you saw fit to use the time. And then so after that video assignment you would see a more typical homework assignment, and so this one is a longer assignment. The videos are not prominently displayed, but some of the questions would have a video help available. And you can see these questions are similar to the questions that we saw through Canvas, except without that Canvas frame, more of the MyOpenMath look. So this course has a few classroom activities that are also available. These are PDFs that could be used in a classroom. And because this is a pre-calculus course, you can see there's a few chapters on trigonometry in there. If you didn't want the trigonometry part, you could either pull those out of this course, or there's other templates that are available for just college algebra. Some of those are based on the OpenStax college algebra. A lot of them are actually based on a popular book by Stitz and Ziegler. It's an OER textbook that's been around for a number of years, so it's gained some popularity. It's not as slick looking as the OpenStax works. It's in LaTeX, so if you wrote your master's thesis in LaTeX, that's sort of how this textbook looks. It's well organized and it's good. There's great content.
So Roy,
yeah.
Someone had a question, a really good question, about whether the videos on these quizzes are embedded in, or do you have to go find the video? So maybe you can address that.
Oh yeah, good question. So the videos are embedded in the assignment, so the student doesn't need to go find them, doesn't even need to click on a link. If they open the assignment, they're not even going to see the question right away maybe. They'll see the video, and hopefully it's tempting for them to actually watch it. It doesn't enforce that they did watch it, but there is a question testing whether they understand the main concept of it. So those videos are here. The student certainly doesn't need to link out to find them. Also, there's no advertisements or something distracting them away from their math homework. And also, for an instructor using this template, they're all in there already. You don't need to find them as an instructor. Now, if you wanted to customize or delete some sections, of course, that would be something you as an instructor would do. But for the students, everything's all there. Let me just see. One other thing I'm going to show is the MyOpenMath gradebook. And I think we're okay on time, but keeping an eye on that. So the MyOpenMath gradebook, and actually this isn't the most interesting gradebook to show. Give me just a second. I'm going to switch over to another gradebook that has more interesting content. So the gradebook might look a little overwhelming, but hopefully parts of it are familiar to any other gradebook you may have used before. So the gradebook has, there's a gray box up here with some details, but the main content are along the top. You have the headings of the total, and then these are grading categories. So like the homework in this class is worth 8% of the total grade. So there's a particular color for that. The tests are worth 50%, and so there's another color for that. Then as you scroll to the right here, you'll see the actual individual assignments, and those are all using the same color coding. And then, of course, down the left-hand side, you have your students and the student scores. You'll notice that there's a lot of color in this gradebook. You can change that here, but the way I've set that, so I'm going to change that. So you can have it color so that the white scores are in the 70% range, green scores are 80 or above, and then the red scores are below 70. So you can quickly see who's doing well, who's not. And if you wanted to contact some students, you could sort that column, and then quickly you can actually check the boxes over here and copy the email addresses of the students who got an A and say, great job on your test. and then the other students, you could send an appropriate message to them. So that's the basics of the gradebook. There's a ton of settings here. And David Littman, who's on this call but maybe muted, as a math instructor and the one who programmed this, he really thought about the instructor's workflow. And so things that may be a little bit clunky on other systems work like a dream on MyOpenMath, in my opinion. Things that you think a gradebook should do, it probably does. There's a lot of settings though, so maybe in the beginning, don't worry about all the settings, but there's a whole other page with lots of advanced settings that you could tweak to make the gradebook work the way you want to for your particular class.
Let me mention also that you can do late passes. Maybe you can talk about that, Roy, because that's an important feature.
Yeah, okay, so for students doing assignments after a due date, you can handle those in two ways. If you want, you can have every student who wants to do something late contact you, and you can make a manual exception for those. And you can do those on the gradebook by choosing a student and then which assignments you want to make an extension for. It's called make an exception. So you can do that manually. And then, as Larry mentioned, there's the concept of a late pass, which we saw a hint of that in the intro assignment. So the late pass is a way where the student can, on their own, without bothering the instructor, get a little bit of an extension on an assignment. And so as an instructor, you can set that up to be, for example, a 24-hour extension or a 72-hour extension. And then you also control how many late passes students get at the beginning of the semester. And then as things come up in their lives, they can just use the late pass without bothering you and get a little bit of an extension. You also control if there's any kind of deduction to their score for those assignments that they do after the due date. So again, lots of settings for you to set how you want that to work. One thing I wanted to mention is MyOpenMath, although it's an online homework system, it doesn't necessarily need to be used in an online course. So most of the courses that we teach at Santa Ana College are not online courses, but use online homework, similar to the way you would use online homework in using other commercial textbooks. So this can be used for on the ground courses as well as for online courses. I think that's all I was going to show for these two courses. Larry, if you think of something that I forgot, feel free to mention that, and we'll take some questions. I think, Larry, you were going to show the statistics course.
Yeah, can you unshare your desktop so I can get into it?
Oh, thank you for the reminder.
Okay, and again, pop in questions if you have, and now Roy's going to be looking at the chat box for the questions. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to talk about a project that I did a pilot of about a year ago, and not just with me, Jessica Quang and Cindy Moss from Oxnard College, and Jessica's from Bay Area, Skyline, or one of those colleges. Sorry about that. But we got together, and one of the things for me is, especially in Tahoe, I'm very isolated. I'm the tech person pretty much for the math department and pretty much for the college. And there's no one else to get help from or to work with. And I believe in working in a community. So what I did is I formed a group of 3 to start. And let me grab, just a minute, that one. No, that's desktop 1, just a minute. I think it's this one. Yeah, there we go. So what I did is I got together and we decided we would work on building a statistics class. So you can go to MyOpenMath, and we built a statistics class in MyOpenMath. And what's great about MyOpenMath, which isn't true of the publisher's site, is you can form a community, you can create a course or a section or whatever you want to do materials, and then you can share it out as an open educational resource to the world. And I like that model much better than you go and you make your students pay, $120 each for the rest of eternity, and then if you don't like something, that's too bad. So this allows us to be flexible, and in fact we created this with more than we necessarily needed, and we each grabbed the things that we like. So this is a statistics class, and we tried to get, what we did is we incorporated it with the OpenStax statistics textbook. So the one from Olowski, and it's a pretty good book. One of the things that I've realized, and it's kind of depressing, but most students don't read the book. And if you're math faculty, you probably get it too. But they do their homework. If they, you hope they all do their homework. At least most do their homework. But they don't all read the book unless they really need it. So the homework system is the way to help them get to read the book when they're confused about something, because they're probably not going to do that, the reading the book as the very first thing. But we did want to incorporate this into the textbook. So let me just show you an example of, I don't know, how about confidence, how about hypothesis tests? So if I click on hypothesis test, this will give a quiz for hypothesis tests. Notice it's very robust. In one problem, you can have a question with multiple choice. You can have a number. I'm not going to try and do this problem because I don't have my calculator with me, but you can write numbers down. You can do more multiple choice. You can do all kinds of different types of problems within the same question. And what we did
Larry, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We are seeing your email screen.
Oh, sorry. You're not able to see it?
No.
Oh, yeah, Roy, let me know. Let's try stop sharing. Let's try reshare. That's weird. Okay, let's try it one more time. Thank you. And let me go find it. I think it's that one. Try it again. Now can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, I got dual screens, and so I got two things going, multiple things going on to make sure I can figure all this out, and I grabbed the wrong one. So this is an example of a problem, and you'll notice it has lots of different types. And in stats, you don't usually just have one question. You have one topic kind of thing, and then you have an A, B, C, D, E, F, G. That's pretty universal in a stats class. And within each question, you have multiple types of questions. Canvas can't do that, but MyOpenMath can pretty much do anything. That's the good news. The other thing we did is, if you look at this particular example, it says recidivism rate for convicted sex offenders is 14%. What we have is these numbers are randomly generated. And the entire problem has randomly generated numbers and answers that are according to those randomly generated questions, or those random generations. So that if a student tries the problem again, they will get different numbers. Okay, the probability that they'll get all the same numbers is pretty much close to 0. So it allows us to make sure that they can keep trying the problem, they get the idea, and they're not just memorizing the numbers and then typing in, because there's no learning in that. The other thing you'll notice, if you go to the bottom of this, is that we have some hint buttons. So in the hint buttons, we have a help button, we have videos, and we have textbook pages. I believe if I click on this, you won't be able to see it because it's a pop-up screen, I think. I could try and see what happens. Let's see. Oh, no, you can probably see this. There's a hint button. So it's hints for hypothesis testing. Just pedagogically, at least my philosophy is, I don't like the idea of having them be able to click the problem, see the exact problem with maybe different numbers, but all they're doing is they're memorizing numbers, or they're not, or they're going to change the numbers and that's it. I want them to understand the concepts. So this hint gives them the concepts. And that's kind of how I decided, and as our team decided, that it would be a good idea to do the concepts and not just a problem of that. We also have videos of different types. So there's a video for calculations, there's a setup, there's an interpretation video, and each of those is going to give you different pieces of this kind of problem. It also has a textbook page link. It might take a moment. And this takes us to the OpenStax book for those particular pages, just like you would see in, say, my lab. And the idea is we wanted to make sure that instructors aren't going to say, well, this is This is like, yeah, it's free, but it's inferior to what we're already using. We want it to be superior to what you're already using. We want this to have all the features and the community at the same time. So we wanted to make sure that this worked well for that. And so this is the book anyway. So in the problems we have that, but then there's, you can actually, let me go back. And if you look at any of the particular, like what we were just looking at, chapter 10 for example, and we look at the questions, what we've done is we've set it up so that question number 1 not only is going to have random numbers chosen, but also we'll have random questions chosen with those concepts. So the first one's going to be about wildfires in South versus the East, 2 propositions z-test, 2 proportions z-test. The next is going to be divorce percent living together before marriage versus not marriage together. So if they try again, they're going to get a different, not just different numbers, but actually going to get a different problem, but the same concept. And you can set it so that if they get it wrong, or right if they want, but usually when they get it wrong, they can try again. And they'll get a different problem with the same concept. And that's a little bit like where you have that learning system that kind of figures out what they need and then they work on that. This does the same thing. They get it wrong and then they work on the ones that got wrong. And it's very effective. The students like it. They learn from it. I've had great success. I've been using this. This is my 3rd quarter now, running this pilot. And I don't get complaints ever anymore about this from my students, which is great. They still complain that statistics is hard. So let you know that's not going to go away. But they like the assignments and they like the fact that they can keep trying and they can learn from it. And they get all these different hints and resources. Okay, so that's our project. And I guess you weren't able to see, but this has each of the chapters. So it pretty much does what just about everyone does in a statistics class. So the other thing I did is I created a spreadsheet program. There are calculators, of course, out there, but I'm a believer in computers because calculators are ancient. We do that so we can test with them, but I have my students use a spreadsheet program. I use Google Sheets. This is also, I don't know if you call it OER because it's Google, but it's available for free for everybody without advertisement. So it's close to OER as you get. And this pretty much does everything that you need to do in a stats class. I have a 1var stats. I always tell my students what you have to know to do is you have to be able to put your numbers in, and then you have to be able to move your eyeballs so that you can move your eyeballs over and see the mean, the sample variance, sample standard deviation, etc. Same thing with 2 variable statistics, that now you have 2 sets, and they have to know is it, and I want them to be able to decide, is it an independent statistics or is it dependent statistics? Okay, it also does it as frequency tables or expected value. So I try to make sure that all the main things that we do in our class work on this spreadsheet. Okay, we also use a calculator, but I want them to know both because I'm a believer in computers. There's chi-squared analysis. I do one-way ANOVA, not two-way ANOVA, because I don't think too many of us teach that anymore. And then what I call dataless. That's the old where they give you the mean or they give you the proportion. You got to find a confidence interval or a hypothesis test. So it's all available, and it's free, and that's a good thing. Students never complain about the price. Pretty easy to use, and all they have to do is make a copy, and then it's theirs. So that is the Google Sheets that I've created. I wanted to show you some other things. They're not OER, but they're also free, that I use a lot of. One is Desmos. So I'm not sure, some of you might be really familiar with Desmos. Again, I don't build all these things. I built some of them, but I don't build all these things. But I find them. And Desmos is great. I don't know, x squared. And there it is. And it does all the things you want to do. If you go to Google, you type in Desmos, and you type in what you want to do, it'll give like full explanations. It'll have an example of it. So I'm a big believer in this Desmos. It's also California, which is good, Bay Area. Nice guy that created this thing. Another one that I use in my multivariable calculus class and some other classes is CalcPlot 3D. And the nice thing about this one is I'm actually part of this project, but I'm not the author of it. Paul Seeberger is the author of this one, and he has a National Science Foundation grant. And whenever I have a suggestion like, hey, it'd be nice if it had this feature, there's usually like a few day turnover, and there it is. The feature is created because he'll do it. He's really good about it. So you could do all the things that you would expect to do: function, space curve, vector field. You could do vector. You can do an implicit surface, parametric surface, a region. You can make a slider, so you can do all the things you're used to doing in 3 dimensions. Very nice to have. And then you can change the axes. Basically, tried to make it really easy to use. Okay, format. You can also take a point. You can move it around and see what happens on the graph. So it's very interactive, and there's all kinds of things you can do with this. This is, I call it a work in forever progress. And Paul is always improving on it. So you have a suggestion, you send an email, and he'll make it happen, which is really neat. So anyway, it's a great little tool that I use for my vector calculus class. So that's pretty much it for these guys. I thought next I would talk about the grant I have. So right now I have a ZTC grant. So if you don't know what that stands for, that means zero textbook cost. So the philosophy is a student can walk in to our college, Lake Tahoe Community College, first time ever, say, I'm going to be a math major, and then every class that that student takes, from beginning till end, including general education classes, won't have any cost for the textbook. And that's what this grant, the grant is to make that happen. So I have this grant, the ZTC grant, and again, my philosophy is nobody should ever try to do a big piece of work by themselves. I am not doing this by myself. And in fact, Roy is here and he's working on it with me. Jessica's here, she's working on it. I didn't see the whole list. We got a lot of people here, but there might be some others, so I apologize if I didn't name you all. I'm a believer in a math community. So in particular, I got together, I sent out a broadcast, who's interested, okay, and I told them the details of it, to do what we did with statistics for pretty much all the rest of the classes. So this goes from high to low, so differential equation, linear algebra, Calc 3, Calc 1 and 2, pre-calc, and beginning and intermediate algebra. I didn't do arithmetic and pre-algebra. That's a weird one because with this AB 705, I don't even know if that's going to exist pretty soon. So I didn't want to put a lot of work into that or have a lot of people put a lot of work into that and then it goes away. No one really knows where that's going. But right now, it's a mystery. So we started at beginning algebra. So a student can start at beginning algebra, take all of the classes from beginning algebra all the way up through differential equations, okay, or linear algebra if that's your last one, and never have to buy a book. And I'll tell you, the students love it. One of the things, and maybe that's not true at your college, but we're Tahoe, and you may not know about Tahoe, but we call it poverty with a view. It's beautiful here, and there are no good jobs. So our students are pretty much all poor. But if the textbook is free and they have a BOG waiver, they can afford college. And that's my philosophy. I want to make sure that my students are not dropping my class because they can't afford to be in college. That doesn't happen. Housing's a different issue. I'd love to be able to give them free housing, but I can't do that. But everything else is pretty much free. So that's the idea. And what I did, if you look at these people, you might recognize a bunch of them. These are our colleagues. Every single one of the people in my group is a community college math faculty at a California community college. Because I wanted it to be us. I wanted it to be our group of people. I wanted math people because these are math classes. I wanted community college because that's the focus. And I wanted to be all over the state. So we got people from a dozen or so colleges that are working on this project, and they can help spread the word also in their colleges and in their sister colleges. So that was my idea with this grant. And I have wonderful people. There's no way I can do this myself. No one should ever even try to do that. But what I can do is I can get a team together where everyone's interested and we're all building. And the idea of this is that for fall quarter, we're on the quarter system. For fall quarter, we're going to have all of these courses in pilot stage so that our students will be able to take any of these courses, if we offer them, of course, and be able to not have to pay for anything. Okay, we even now have a calculator rental program, and it's now free, so they don't have to pay for the calculator. So a student walks in, no charge, and it will be ready in our fall term. What the idea on the grant is, not only because I know most of you are not going to be on quarter systems, most of you are in semester system. So the idea is to chunk this up in 2 versions. So for example, we teach a 3-quarter beginning/intermediate algebra course. And we're also going to chunk this up so that there is a semester beginning algebra and a semester intermediate algebra class. So that wherever you're coming from, you're going to be able to, if you want to, adopt this class. It'll be like the stats class where the questions are going to have links to hints, the textbook pages that are relevant, a video for every problem that's relevant. So there'll be resources for the questions. We don't want to have a kind of, well, it's free, but not as good, but at least it's free. No, this is going to be as good as anything you'd pay for. That's my vision. And I'm watching it. We have a good group, and it's going to happen. So that's the plan, and it is going to be ready, and it's OER, which means it's going to be available for anybody who wants to use it. I always tell my students and other people, the cost is that if you find a mistake, please let me know so that we can fix it, okay, because we're a community. And that way we fix the error, and that error is fixed for the rest of eternity. And it'll get cleaner and cleaner and cleaner. Something you might notice at the bottom of my list of people is accuracy checker. Maybe you guys are perfect in terms of never ever making a mistake, but I'm not. Mark Harbison, who's at Sacramento City College. Again, this is people from all over the state. He's at Sacramento City. He is the best eagle eye I've ever met. He knows how to look at something and find every little tiny like format mistake and spelling error and math error, and he's going to go through and he's going to be checking all these questions. So we have a professional just to do that, because I think that's really important, so we don't have problems that don't work, okay, or they just don't read well because no one could understand them. Okay, I know our students are good accuracy checkers too, but we want to do as much as we can before we send it to our students. And again, that'll be in the fall when we send it. So that's the kind of main point of this particular grant. One of the things we're going to do, because we're now a Canvas state, is we are going to make sure that every one of these courses has a Canvas shell. And Barbara Lowski has already made OpenStax Canvas shells. I'm going to take what she has done, I'm going to incorporate what we're doing so that we have a full-fledged set of Canvas courses that have all the details, lots of resources, not just MyOpenMath resources, but other resources, handouts, and possibly quizzes and test banks and whatever it might be that will help in terms of the resources, kind of for professor and for student resources, both sides of the coin on that one. So that it'll just be, if you want to, you can jump in, and then there might be more resources than you want, but it's very easy to just click remove or click unpublish. If you don't want students to have that resource, you can do that. It's very simple in Canvas. And again, the Canvas shells will be integrated into the MyOpenMath so that that's all going to be set up. So that's one of the things, and that's what I call ancillaries. All the different things that might happen that comes in OER form. Okay, we're also going to have a accessibility expert take a look at what we've got, and he's going to work with us, and we're going to do our best to make sure that this is accessible as possible. Okay, sometimes it's not accessible, and then you have a plan B, and then you're still legal. as long as you say, here's the assignment, but if you have a motion impairment, then here's a Plan B assignment, and that will count. So we're going to make sure that we satisfy the accessibility requirements of the ADA, American Disability Act. So that's going to happen, and that's real important. Every video that we link to will be closed captioned. Okay, that's an automatic, and those of you who are on my team, like Roy, you know I keep saying that, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Are there any questions? I see. I don't have the chat box in front of me, but I noticed there were 29, I think.
If I could maybe just address a couple quick things, and then maybe we'll get some questions. One has been about follow-up email, and I know there's different things that people want to follow up about, but let me put this out there, and Larry, if you have a better way of facilitating this, chime in. But two possible follow-ups from this would be, we could send out a PDF with highlights of some templates, just to point you in the direction of some templates that we think are ready to use at this point. And then also, if you're up for spreading the word on future webinars, or if you'd like to know yourself about future webinars, it would be nice to have a way to follow up with you. One way to do that would be to send Larry or I an email and just let us know your email address. I guess another would be to just put it in the chat box here. And Larry, if you have any other ideas, please do that. Larry, could I take over the screen share just for a moment?
Sure, let me stop share.
One thing I forgot to mention was signing up for an account on MyOpenMath, and you can do that. Hopefully you can see this screen. So if you go to myopenmath.com, probably the first screen you will see is this, with a brief explanation of what MyOpenMath is and a place to log in. If you don't have an account on MyOpenMath, way down at the bottom there's a button to request an instructor account. And from there it asks for some basic information. And if you could, it's volunteers that do this verification process. So if you could use your college email address here, and also if there's a web page on your college web page that shows that you're an instructor, it's very helpful to have those things for verification. Otherwise, it may take a while. And like I mentioned, it's volunteers that do this approval, so it could take 1 to 2 weeks. So my advice would be, do it now, so that when you're at the moment where you need it, you've already got an account. If you forget your password, it's easy to get that reset.
Roy, you might want to also mention the MyOpenMath course.
Oh, support type
the support
stuff?
course, yeah.
Okay.
I think that's what we're seeing.
Yeah, I'm going to switch to a different screen. So when you first log into MyOpenMath, you'll see a list of your courses. It might look a little bit better organized than mine does. But at the bottom, you'll see courses you're taking. And two of the most important courses are the support course and the training course. Just a quick view of that in our last couple of minutes. The training course has a number of videos covering various topics that you'd need to know when using MyOpenMath. I will say that some of those videos were created 5 years ago when MyOpenMath didn't have as many features, so there's a couple things that are missing from those videos, but it'll definitely give you the general idea. And then a very useful course is called the support course, and the most useful thing in there are the forums. And there are forums for general questions and then more particular issues. And so on these forums, people post a question, and somebody might answer it. And if you ever see a question that you know the answer to, please answer that. It's mostly community driven. You'll see David Lippman a lot on here. Jessica answers a lot of questions too. So use that support course for specific questions, and again, the training course for more of the videos on the basic concepts.
I wonder if we can get David to say a word or two. It'd be nice to have him, if he can get unmuted.
What do you want me to say?
Tell us what college, what part of the world do you live in, and how'd you get started with MyOpenMath?
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I'm David Lippman. Here, let me turn on my, hi. And I teach at Pierce College, not the one down in LA, but the one up in Lakewood, Washington. And MyOpenMath is sort of the result of, it's now 12 years of development, starting out with a Washington state system called WAMAP, and then about 7 years ago or so, MyOpenMath, and it's sort of a really nifty community effort, letting people create their own content and share it and develop really great things for everyone to use.
Thank you, David.
Yeah.
So it looks like a number of people have posted their email in the chat, and then Jessica has added a nice spreadsheet. So if you're up for that, if you could put your contact info in that spreadsheet, we'll follow up in the next few days with a little bit of more information. And then later on down the road, if we do more webinars, and if you want to invite your colleagues to hear a little bit about MyOpenMath, please help us spread the word.
Yeah, that would be a lot easier than just sending your email in a chat box, because then we got to kind of figure it out. So if you can put it in a spreadsheet, that's a whole lot easier for us.
Thank you, Jessica, for setting that up and for answering all these questions.
Yeah,
in the
and
chat.
Jessica, you need to give edit rights or no one can put their email in. Right now it's on view, I think.
Any last questions before we wrap up here?
Any questions? We're happy to answer some more questions if there are any. We tried to keep it at 1 hour and it's 1:58, so we're doing pretty well. Could you post a link? So Jessica Kwang actually is the one who created the video, and what she says is that there's been some new developments in MyOpenMath, so she's going to be building a new video that include the new developments, and these are like really new developments. So so you're going to have to be a little patient on that, but then with this email list, when that video is posted, we will send that out. Also, this particular webinar, if all goes well, I've never done this before. I've never used Camtasia to record a Zoom thing that I'm not the host on, but if it works, I'm going to take that and put it on YouTube, and then we'll be able to also send a link out to all the people. Then you can share it with whoever wants to hear also, and I'll share it with some other groups.
If you do need a video right away, or you want to just get the general idea of the Canvas integration, I'm pretty sure there's a video in the training course. Sort of at the end of that course, there's a folder for integration with LMSs, and there'd be a video there for Canvas or any other LMS.
Right, but that probably won't have the newest upgraded,
It's an
updated
older
stuff.
video, yeah.
Yeah. So any other questions?
Good point. We'll try to keep the chat open until we get that Google link editable.
It's
Are we
editable. I
good?
see people typing it in now.
Oh, good. Okay, so it looks like we're there. You might need to, I don't know, refresh your screen. But
Yeah.
you
I
should
think I'm
get-
going to stop the recording because I don't think there's anything going on that people need to hear at this point. What do you think?
Good point.